Identifile. Tonight, a group of lights float above Houston, Texas. Are they the coordinated flight of unknown crafts? A swarm of drones menacing the American West? Or a collection of lanterns drifting in the wind? We will examine the video in depth, then attempt to identify the floating lights.
Oh, that's crazy! Did you just notice that? Did you just notice those?
I thought they were drones at first, but they don't make any sound.
Wow, that's nuts! Wow!
There's another one right there.
Oh, they're kind of like lining up too. What? They were so fast. Huh.
Initial observations of the objects are as follows. They were filmed with a handheld smartphone camera. The camera is angled up slightly, and the objects appear near the tree line. The objects look like several points of light. They're too small to make out clearly. They move across the sky, and their flights do not seem to be coordinated. Instead, the objects drift towards and away from one another. What is this anomaly? There are two possibilities. It could be a group of small objects low to the ground, like floating lanterns or drones. Or it could be a group of unknown objects farther away, higher in the sky. To determine which it might be, we can attempt to calculate the speed of the objects. To do that, we can examine the footage more closely. Every camera has a field of view, a specific cone of vision it can see in. For example, the human eye has 210 horizontal degrees of vision. If we know the field of view of the camera used to film the objects, we can measure the distances of the object's flight as fractions of that angle. Then, using trigonometry, we can convert those angles into real-world measurements by assuming the object's height in the air. This means we can write a calculation, which will tell us the speed of the objects if they were low to the ground, and their speed if they were high in the atmosphere. This is that calculation. A more detailed breakdown of it can be found in the description. Using this calculation, if the objects were flying at the height of commercial aircraft, 35,000 feet, then they would be traveling at a speed of 1,000 meters per second, more than double the speed of sound. They would be flying at Mach 2 in commercial airspace, which would definitely draw attention from nearby air traffic control centers, not to mention the sonic booms which would be heard. To be flying below the speed of sound, the objects would need to be flying below 10,000 feet, and even then they would be faster than a jet. Again, likely to draw attention. If the objects were floating lanterns or drones, you would expect them to be much lower to the ground. At about 150 feet, the speed the objects would be traveling at is quite close to the wind speed at the time in the Houston area. The two objects being measured here are also traveling at very different relative speeds. This means if they were flying at the same altitude as each other, for them to all be in close proximity, they would have to be low to the ground. At higher altitudes, the difference in their speed would mean their distance apart would be tens of miles. Given this evidence, the objects could be explained as several unknown objects flying at incredible speed, tens of miles away from each other, with only a single witness. Or floating lanterns flying at normal wind speeds close to the witness. Or drones flying slightly higher and slightly faster. Whichever you believe, Anomaly 2 has been identified.